Yes, he
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Thanks for joining us for this edition of Donnybrook. We welcome you as we have a lot of hot topics to discuss. And then on the second half, during Next Up, when we feature a local leader, we're going to talk to Arrey Obenson, who's the CEO of the International Institute of St. Louis, who will be welcoming Afghan refugees to our area. And Wendy and Ray will have questions for him. First, let's meet those panelists. There she is, Wendy Wiese from KTRS. We have Mr. Bill McClellan from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Ray Hartmann from rawstory.com, the Riverfront Times, and KTRS, and Alvin Reid from the St. Louis American. And before we jump into some of our topics for this week, Bill, I know you have a remembrance for Bill Hayne, the state lawmaker from Illinois, who is also state's attorney for Madison County, who recently passed away.
Yes, he had a terrific reputation as a state's attorney, that's prosecutor. And then he was a state senator, and he had been a decorated Vietnam War veteran and just a good man. His son is now the state's attorney for Madison County.
Yeah, well, thank you.
We all will miss Bill Hayne.
Condolences.
Absolutely. Thoughts and prayers with the Hayne family at this time. Well, Ray, check that. Alvin, we'll start with you for this edition. You wrote a column on student athletes getting vaccinated. You believe that high school athletes should everyone be vaccinated, even swimmers. But this issue is becoming controversial for employees of the city of St. Louis as well. Mayor Tashara Jones has announced that all employees have to be vaccinated. The police union indicated this week that 12 police officers will resign if that is the case. And John Collins Mohammed, a member of the Board of Aldermen, said he's going to introduce a measure to repeal that mandatory vaccination. How do you feel about what's going on in the city, and explain why you believe that high school athletes should all be vaccinated?
Well, I will tell you that it was like the New York City metropolitan area and Mayor de Blasio and their health department laid down the law, says if you're going to play these certain sports, not all of them, that you have to be vaccinated. Now, baseball, you don't have to be vaccinated. The bowling, you do. All sports should be wrapped up in that, I think. And then also, if any city says our employees, especially those that work in the public, have to be vaccinated, I have zero problem with that. And if you don't want to work for the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department because you have to get vaccinated, then I suggest that you go find another job. There are some ramifications for not being vaccinated. Employers have a right to tell you that you have to be vaccinated. And that's just, in my mind, that's all there is to it. And, we've been funning and not funning and gaming. I'll take that back. But we have been kind of avoiding the issue of this. And if there were more mandatory mandates, and that's what I said in the column, if there had been more mandatory mandates to be vaccinated, we would not be in such dire straits with COVID-19 and the Delta variant as we are now.
I agree with everything that you said in your column. It was brilliantly written. I just believe more strongly in the basic principle that this nation is a nation in which its residents should be free from religious persecution. If these people can prove, and I mean a lot of hospitals, including Mercy and others, you have to have a religious one of your religious leaders make the case. This is very serious business. If you are willing to go down that road and to have special testing required, to have other mitigation efforts required, then I think that we should support those religious principles whenever possible.
Well, I agree, Wendy, but I think that we'll have a whole lot of new churches sprouting up, or people joining, denominations that they don't really care about, but they just want to show the government that they're not going to get vaccinated.
And there's a material difference between making people get vaccinated against whatever religion they are, their religious views, as Bill points out, there may be a lot of them, but but there's a difference between making them do it and saying, if you don't get vaccinated, because we have a worldwide pandemic, because 90 to 99% of the people hospitalized are unvaccinated, we simply, as a people, cannot afford to have you jeopardize people's lives.
Well, why not do what Delta Airlines has done and then say, okay, if you work for us, City of St. Louis, and you get health insurance, which I believe you do, you're going to pay an extra $200 per month if you're not vaccinated. And that'll help defray some of the costs for the unvaccinated hospitals, and then maybe also pass along some of those hospitalization costs to the individual who is in the hospital with COVID without a vaccine. And I think that might be a good...
The issue
That's
is
a great idea.
This isn't about penalizing people who don't have
Yes,
access.
it is.
No, it isn't. It's about protecting the rest of us. There's a material. This is why this issue makes me nuts, whether it's mass or vaccines. It's a practical means of protecting.
I get you, Ray.
It's not about penalizing.
All right. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like the National Football League, they're strong arming players. No, we don't have a vaccine mandate, but you got to follow all the protocols. Or by the way, if you are around somebody that has COVID-19, you have to sit out at least 5 days, maybe up to 10. You don't even have it, but you have to sit out. So now you've hurt your team and everybody's mad at you. I don't care. It's time to strong arm, force, quit kidding around. And so fine. Yeah, you got to be vaccinated. Work someplace else.
Let's move on to another topic, and it's the Loop Trolley in the news once again. The Business Journal reporting that the East-West Gateway Council of Governments, Ray Hartmann, which is kind of an organization representing the different municipalities and counties and the 14-county region, is going to vote on whether or not to recommend to the federal government to give $1.2 million to the trolley to kickstart it. We know that it wasn't that popular when it was running, but there are some people who say, okay, if there isn't this money from the federal government to get it going again, and by the way, that money would be under a program that's used to reduce congestion and mitigate air pollution. If the trolley goes bust, that would jeopardize other federal dollars for regional projects. So would you, even though you may not be a big fan of the trolley, hold your nose and vote to recommend those federal dollars for this trolley?
I think it's about math. I mean, there's a lot of emotion tied up in the trolley, and I was a very strong supporter of it until I wasn't, because the people really spoke with their absence from the trolley, I guess, as far as in terms of its, marketability. It's math. I mean, I think it was something like $50 million. It depends if the math says we're going to have to send tens of millions of dollars back to the federal government for shutting it down, and it's going to cost us far more to shut it down than it is to operate it, then yeah, I think it would be really foolish to do that. And as you point out, it would also jeopardize other projects. But I think that it's really math. It's not emotion, it's math.
Is it true that the congestion mitigation air quality, is that what CMAQ stands for, Ray? That all of those funds are still available with the $1.6 million for the trolley, if we go ahead and do this, if for all of the other projects. If that's the case, then I will get on the math train with Ray and say it's not worth the punch in the eye we're going to get just to shut it down.
Well, I think we just need to reform something. If the federal government is saying, we know this project isn't working and it's been a failure, but you better keep putting money into it or we're going to punish you. I mean, what kind of a government or business would operate under that kind of thinking? I mean,
that's where I was.
Senator.
That's where I was going too, Bill. That this time, I mean, there comes a point where it is a good idea to throw yourself on the mercy of the court and say, like, okay, this was a bust. But we do have some things that we know will work. This was a mistake, but don't penalize us for the future for this boondoggle. And I think that the federal government, and I'm not talking about just this administration as opposed to the last administration, I think you fall favorably because this money is for development. It's for purpose. It's not give us our money back. And besides, on the grand scheme of things, the trolley, while not working, and while I think we all acknowledge has wasted some money, it probably is 951st on governmental waste in the United States of America right now. So I would just say like, oh, no. We would like that money, but we would like to use it elsewhere. And please don't punish us for doing it. I could make that case in court, and I'm not an attorney.
Well, the only thing is they're taking these federal dollars to reduce congestion, or that would be the purported purpose. But, let's face it, there's not much congestion on Delmar or de Bolivar. I mean, if you're going to be really honest about it. I mean, there's congestion in our area, but not right there. Wendy Wiese, how about next door? De Bolivar hits Lindell near the History Museum, and it's along that strip of byway. The St. Louis alderperson, Heather Navarro, wants to turn that 4-lane road, Lindell, into 2 lanes, 1 lane in each direction, because the traffic is too fast and she's concerned about safety. Although I think that the traffic is actually faster on Skinker, and I'm not sure why they don't have police officers patrolling the area. But how do you feel about turning Lindell, that beautiful stretch between Forest Park and those mansions, into a 2-lane road?
I think it's a huge mistake. I would love to know whether this is some kind of a generational misunderstanding. I don't know how old Russell Jackson is. He's a partner at Dowd Bennett, but he said this would be a nightmare to try to get into the Central West End and Kings Highway. Our daughter lives on Waterman, so we are constantly using Lindell. And in terms of these big trucks that have been mentioned, I've never seen them. I'm not doubting. I mean, I'm sure that occasionally they are used, but to take what has become such an important thoroughfare, and it isn't as if the mansions, let's face facts, these are mansions by and large. They sit off of the road. I swear to you, I grew up with my jaw dropping. I love being able to drive by those mansions. I mean, they're the Meet Me in St. Louis houses that we all kind of dreamed about, at certain points in our lives. But to reduce it to 2 lanes so that you can include bike paths when you're right next to Forest Park, I just don't understand that at all. I know their hearts are in the right place, but this just seems like creating a problem where one does not exist.
Well, when people are going to drive through Forest Park, if Lindell is shut down, we're going to have Forest Park. We don't want cars in there, not many of them, and we have all these bicyclists already there, and now we're going to funnel traffic through Forest Park. What is the alderwoman thinking of?
But I don't think that necessarily the traffic has to go there. Now, I'm kind of like Wendy on the opposite side, but I have a disclaimer too. My oldest daughter now lives in Skinker de Bolivar with friends in a townhouse. So I know exactly. I used to drive up and down it all the time when the American was closer to there. But I don't have a problem with it because as I stump out here, I stump wherever for beauty, tranquility. And if we can reduce traffic along this stretch, which is right next to Forest Park, I think that's the kind of thing that we need to do. I understand that it's been like this a long time, okay? And I'm sorry that I make umpty-ump cash every year lawyer, it might take him a little longer to get to work. Well, trust me, while he's on his phone, he's probably billing somebody. So he's probably making more money. But I'm sorry, any idea that creates a buffer of beauty and it is adjacent to any park anywhere, then I have to the tree hugger in me says let's do it.
Do you imagine how busy it'll be, Alvin?
No, I can't imagine. And the first time I get stuck in traffic, I'll be cussing in my car and, telling Bryce that she needs to move back to civilization. And he'll just be.
You'll say those darn tree huggers.
Exactly.
You mentioned lawyers, Alvin. If they narrow this, the risk of the McCloskeys who live right around there coming out with their guns is a public safety concern, I think. But I don't like to be in the middle on something, but my view is it's a very well intended idea, and it would be a good idea if and only if they have some sort of strategy, something they can do, and I can't figure out what it would be to mitigate the traffic, because as Bill says, that traffic is not going to disappear. It's going to go somewhere else, and it's already, in my view, it can be nightmarish in rush hour along Forest Park Parkway right now. It is terrible. It's terrible on Lindell. I mean, and you have to deal, and you're talking about going to the Muni Opera and things like that. You have to deal with some reality here. And I think it's a good goal, because I think she's right that it should be more, pedestrian.
Well, maybe we'll have a big trolley line.
You got to have an answer. What's that?
I said maybe we'll have a trolley line.
That would possibly be a solution.
Well, let me ask you this:
it's crazy.
Why not have a police officer pull over the speeders?
What?
Yeah.
Why not have a police officer pull over the speeding motorists?
Why not?
That's what they should do.
Why can't you block Lindell to those larger trucks that they're referencing and saying are causing so much of the rumbling and the noise?
You could certainly have a no truck zone. That would be fine with me.
Right.
Ray, while we have you front and center, let me ask you about your column, which you wrote this week for the Riverfront Times, where you take on Greater St. Louis Inc. What's Greater St. Louis Inc.? That's that new organization that kind of consolidated 4 other groups: Civic Progress, the Regional Chamber, the Downtown St. Louis Partnership, Alliance STL. It's headed up by former guest of ours, Jason Hall. It also incorporates something you point out called Arch to Park, an organization funded by Schnucks, Washington University, the Taylor family, St. Louis University, and others. I know I'm missing some. You think there's kind of a conflict of interest because Arch to Park is a for-profit. It's now under the umbrella of this regional group, and it's going to be, among other things, city-centric to the detriment of some of the outlying communities.
I'm a big fan of doing Greater St. Louis. I thought it was a great idea. Jason Hall is a terrific young guy. I mean, he's bright, good leader. And I'm all for Greater St. Louis. The problem is, I wouldn't call it a conflict of interest as a design flaw or structural flaw, because the idea that the honest broker, the regional chamber, whatever you want to call it, that Greater St. Louis is in any way close to specific real estate deals and deal flow and site selection, in any way close to it, is a terrible appearance and a reality. And particularly, what's worse is it's a for-profit fund, which by definition does not have the accountability, the reporting, and so forth that a not-for-profit would have. Now, everybody, yes, it's all the kind of the esteemed institutions. There's the Cardinals, there's all these great, but they're in the real estate business as a fund. And even though they claim, well, we just manage it, why do we need the honest broker doing it? I think it's a terrible message to communities all over St. Louis. It also, I think, raises questions as to accountability and transparency. So I think it's a problem and they should divest of it.
And I can favor, oh boy, anything is about improvement. Those deals, you'd have to convince me why I should be against it. Land deals are specifically, you're talking about a commerce that's just up there, and that's where the wealth is, and everybody knows it. Owning land, owning your house, that's where the wealth is. That's why it just kind of seems a little bit troubling to me. And I will say this, and I'm not picking on them, but of all those entities, the St. Louis Cardinals are not in anything except for the money. Okay, and that's
well, I don't think that's true. They have Cardinals Care, which is a not-for-profit.
What have the St. Louis Cardinals invested in they do not expect return
ball
on
fields,
investment?
Ball fields for the kids in the urban area.
That's the foundation. That's Cardinals Care.
Right.
That's not the St. Louis Cardinals.
Well, the Cardinals do run that. I mean, they get the money from the winter warm-up that funds that, Alvin.
Okay.
But I mean, let me. I agree that it's this organization, Arch to the Park, is really interested in developing in a straight line the real estate that goes between WashU through Forest Park all the way to the Gateway Arch. I mean, that's what they want. They believe that you have to have a lot of density with up-and-coming businesses like Cortex and the new Neuroscience Center for Washington University to attract bright and talented people to the region with great restaurants and all that kind of stuff. And I totally agree. I think that's a worthwhile thing. I haven't seen any problems yet, guys, with this arrangement, although, Ray, I realize that there may be some issues here.
Well, Charlie, let me respond to that real quick. I'm sorry, but just to be clear, you described the reality that I think is there, which is a Central West corridor bias. I asked them,
they admit that.
No, I asked them at point blank range, does this include North City? Does this include South Grand? Some of those more difficult areas? And they said emphatically yes. And I haven't seen, and again, one of the problems with Arch to Park as a private entity is they can tell people what they want or not want, and there's no public reporting of it. But the question is, I think a real problem in this is there does not appear to be a serious commitment other than verbal to North St. Louis. And I think it's one of the, and for that matter, like I say, South Grand really needs some attention. So I just don't think you're right. That's what they do, but they would deny what you just said.
But you can't do it under a regional umbrella, can you?
Well, their argument is that the core is critical to the region, and I think they're right. However, they've got to be the honest broker. They've got.
If I live in St. Charles, I would say the core is important to the core.
Well, yeah.
Right?
Well, there was an issue earlier. Remember, about 8 months ago, the organization Greater St. Louis, Inc. had in writing that it wanted to focus all the job creation in the city. Mm-hmm. And then Steve Ellman, the county executive for St. Charles, said, hey, whoa, all the job creation in the city? What about St. Charles? And I think he was right. So then they amended it. But nonetheless, right now, I think all the organizations we've mentioned, including the Cardinals, Alvin, have done great things for our region.
But I think, but please separate Cardinals Care and foundations from what is in this entity. And that's St. Louis Cardinals LLC right there that's in this entity.
And by the way, the Cardinals are only a tiny part of this. My question to you, Charlie, is why not have Arch to Park as a not-for-profit? If it is a civic thing, that because let's not pick on.
I would have no problem with that.
They're just one tiny part of it. You got WashU, SLU. These are all the big boys. They've got a lot. And of course,
well, here's the reason. Because you know, to get a not-for-profit status, 501c3, you have to have an educational component and some various other. Maybe what they do is not eligible for 501c3 status.
There's other 501cs, 501c. They could form a not-for-profit investment fund.
Very interesting. Well, how about you, Wendy Wiese? Let's talk about another piece of real estate, Grants Farm in South County. It was announced this week that Anheuser-Busch InBev will still own it, but it's going to be leased to the heirs of the Busch Brewing dynasty. And the announcement was made this week that it'll be managed by the children and grandchildren of the famous brewing family.
I think it's wonderful. I really do. I mean, the Bushes, whether you subscribe to this or not, for generations, they have been sort of our de facto royal family here in St. Louis. This is their ancestral home. I think it's fantastic. They're committed to preserving, as Robert Herman said, this important but small piece of history in St. Louis. Ulysses S. Grant, a Civil War hero, a president. I'm delighted. I'd rather, and it looks like Anheuser-Busch will still be a major sponsor and still involved, as you said. But everybody seems happy. They bought the family members out who needed to be bought out, and I'm excited to take my grandson to Grant's Farm.
I am too, but the third wasn't there. Triple sticks. Please watch over it. Please. I think I trust for some reason I still trust that man's judgment more than most. Okay. So wherever you're at, I hope you're healthy. I hope you're well. I hope you're enjoying your many, many billions, but please watch over Grant's Farm and make sure it continues to be Grant's Farm. That's all I ask.
Bill McClellan, I want to ask you about plans by St. Charles to bring the controversial Lewis and Clark statue from Charlottesville, Virginia to St. Charles. You know, in Charlottesville, people there got rid of the Robert E. Lee statue and the Lewis and Clark statue because Sacagawea, the Indian guide, was kind of like kneeling down and not displayed in a prominent way. Do you think that this area should bring that statue to the region?
Only if they cannot get the Robert E. Lee statue thrown in with. I mean, it just sounds crazy to me. You have a statue that's already gotten opposition, and I've seen Sacagawea is the way we always use it in Charlie. But the picture I saw, she almost looks like a dog. You know, I mean, she's down on all fours. The two guys are standing up. And I think if St. Charles wants a statue of Lewis and Clark, they ought to commission one. We got a lot of good sculptors, but to bring in something that's already controversial, you know how that movie ends. I mean, people don't look at it and go, well, yeah, I can see that. She probably just dropped something. I mean, people are going to go, this is ridiculous. So, no, I don't think they should do it.
A minute to go.
But I'm with Bill.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I
probably want to edit Bill's remarks a little, but otherwise,
well, I say bring it. You know, it's a beautiful statue. I don't think that she looks like she's demeaned that much. And by the way, the pronunciation Sacagawea is from the late great historian from St. Louis University, Barnaby Faraday, who wrote many.
I admire him a great deal.
And he told me that that's how you pronounce that Indian guide's name. Her son, by the way, Pomp, did go to St. Louis College, which became St. Louis University. That's enough of the history section.
That she was there to help
That's
them
all
with
the time
directions.
we have for this program. In a moment, it's Next Up with Arrey Obenson from the International Institute being grilled by Wendy and Ray. Everybody, stay tuned. That's next.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Welcome back to Next Up, and we're so happy to have back with us Arrey Obenson. He is the president and CEO of the International Institute of St. Louis. Welcome back.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, you picked an interesting time to take over this the Institute, and obviously top of mind for so many of us in this community and throughout the country is the Afghan refugee situation. Can you update us on the position of the Institute and what you make of this situation as it applies to St. Louis?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, as you said, quite an interesting time to take over as president and CEO, but I look at it as a blessing in disguise because this gives me the opportunity to learn faster the job, so to speak, because now I get to see an entire cycle of immigrants leaving their country and coming here and we resettling them and doing all the things that need to be done in a compressed period of time. At the beginning of this year, we had projected that there was going to be an uptick in arrivals of refugees in the community, but we never anticipated that there was going to be a wave as a result of the collapse of the government in Afghanistan. We knew that there was going to be, and we had actually, since 2018, started taking in Afghan SIVs. So SIVs are special immigrant visas designed for people who supported the prosecution of the war in Afghanistan. So since 2018, we've brought in over 250 of those. So we were expecting it and did anticipate that we could, all through the year, welcome 1,000 refugees. But that the circumstances have changed because the calculus is now that we may even have 1,000 by the end of the year and maybe even more as the day goes by. So yes, we at the International Institute are ramping up capacity to be able to welcome the arrivals. But beyond just welcoming the arrivals, there's a lot of things that we do is sourcing housing, ensuring that we can furnish this housing, ensuring that we have provisions in the housing, ensuring that we do a health assessment and plug them into the healthcare system. We're having to make these arrivals quarantine for 10 days, and then if they need to take a COVID vaccine, we have to set them up for a COVID vaccine. Some are coming as families, so we have to ensure that the children, we're working with the St. Louis Public School District to ensure that the children are enrolled in school. Then we have to think about job placement in the economy that we have now. We do an assessment of their English language skills. And if they need English language, we set them up with, depending on their level, job skills. We match them up with employers. And all of this we do in 90 days.
Arrey, to have that special immigration visa means that the individual, I suppose, or their family, a member of their family, has assisted the U.S. war effort in Afghanistan. Do we naturally assume that they are already proficient in English?
Well, of course, for those that, in most cases, they would be proficient in English, in most cases, but not in all cases, because there were those who served as interpreters, translators, admins. There are also those who served as drivers and cooks. And so in some cases, it would not be, but for we are seeing that the majority, significant majority of the SIVs are proficient in English because of that interaction already that they had with the military.
Could I ask a follow-up, Ray, if you don't mind?
Absolutely.
As people who assisted the U.S., the refugees that you have been able to visit with, what is their frame of mind? I can't imagine anything quite as terrifying or chaotic as leaving your homeland under cloak of darkness because you are being hunted. How are they emotionally, physically, spiritually?
They just can't believe that this is happening. That's the reality. Is every time I've tried to ask, it's maybe a week from now they can actually start grasping with the reality, but they can imagine that this happened, that the government folded and that they had to leave in the circumstances which they had to leave. Normally, SIVs, it would be, the SIVs don't leave in the urgency as in this particular case, because it's a process that's established, there's a vetting, there's lots of things that go into it before you actually leave the country and know when you're leaving the country. But in this particular case, they just can't believe that this happened.
All right, I know the International Institute goes to great lengths to stay apolitical, but obviously we saw the horrific, tragic incident today in Afghanistan, and where 12 Marines and at least 60 Afghans lost their lives. And this is a political subject, like it or not. There has been some the mayor and others have been very clear about welcoming Afghan refugees. However, are you, as an institute, do you hear blowback or whatever it is from the other side of people who are not perhaps so interested in having a St. Louis bring in these refugees?
Well, first, let me use this opportunity to extend the condolences to the families of those who were affected by the bomb blast today. Quite an unfortunate and tragic situation. But with that said, the response to this effort has been overwhelming in support of it. I must tell you, my phone has been ringing, and of all the phone calls that I've had, it's always been in support. I have had about 3 calls from people who had more questions than opposition, and I made sure that I called back to have a conversation about why this effort is necessary and explain what the process was because it was more a process question about the healthcare situation. Are they going to be getting the COVID vaccine and things like that? I have not. We've not had any strong opposition to this endeavor, especially as we think about it this way. Think about it this way. I have been speaking a lot with some veterans, and it's amazing to get their side of the story. They see these Afghans as their brothers and sisters. They see these people as people who stood by them in the war. They look at them like they look at every other Marine or every other woman or man that served in the U.S. military, and they see this as an opportunity for them to pay back for the support that they had on the ground. And those people have a completely different perspective. If we support the military, they tell me the fight is not yet over. This is their fight.
St. Louis is one of 19 special cities that are designated to welcome these Afghanis with the SIV, the special immigration status. What does, or special immigration visas? I'm sorry. What is involved in being one of 19 designated cities in terms of the criteria?
Yeah, I think so. This criteria is usually done based on capacity, and this is not the first year that St. Louis, like I mentioned already, again, St. Louis has historically, since 2018, actually been one of the sites for welcoming the SIVs, the Afghans with special immigrant visas. But this is an assessment that is done every year. So based on what you have done in the past, based on the capacity that you have this year, that's what determines that you become a site to receive.
Okay.
And there are lots of other considerations that could be had. We have resettled 696 Afghans in the last 11 years since 2010. So there's a vibrant Afghan community here, which makes this an attractive location. We are also seeing that the Afghans that have arrived here already are arriving here because they have ties already. So they have a friend, they have relatives, and that friend could be people in the military who served with them that they have now become like family that brings them to St. Louis. But they could also have Afghan relatives and friends that are here that encourage them to look at St. Louis as a welcoming community.
All right. Some time ago, the Bosnian Muslims, many came here. And in fact, I think we still have one of the largest communities in outside of, so in New York or wherever, one of the largest in the country. And, but they came, originally there was great population in the city of St. Louis, and that changed. And it was, are there lessons, and I don't know the details of that. I'm sure you have much more, you could maybe talk to our audience about what happened in terms of the residential patterns and so forth involving that community, but also are there lessons to be learned from that experience that would apply in this case to the Afghan refugees?
Yeah, I think the St. Louis community has really come together to capitalize on this opportunity. St. Louis, like every other large city in America, will see people come into the city. And so I think working as a community, we need to determine what we do as a community to keep people within this community, right? And I think that there is that consciousness now with all the work that is done by the partners, the Mosaic Project, for example, Greater St. Louis Inc., in collaboration with the work that we're doing, we're all now having discussions about how do we increase housing capacity in the city? How do we create more affordable housing, affordable and quality housing within the city? Because those are all things that will determine whether people stay or not. The services, we are having conversations about enhancing transportation needs, working with the county as well. So there's a significant level of conversation and engagement around how do we make the city more attractive and keep people in the city over a period of time, because that will really help boost the economy here.
If anything, I think we've heard people expressing shock that the numbers being bandied about 1,000, 2,000, what have you, were so low. And you're saying that there is a chance, obviously, that those numbers will grow and that we could welcome a significant number of refugees. What do you say to the people, Arrey, though, who say, look, you know what, this city has more than its share of problems, and we're taking people from a pretty traumatic situation and putting them in a city that faces traumatic problems in some areas. How do you respond to that kind of statement?
Well, here's what I would say. Firstly, we as a country have a moral obligation to do what we are doing now. And we as a community also have that moral obligation, because there were servicemen and women who left this community and went to serve and had an interaction with the Afghans. That's one. But it's been clearly demonstrated that immigrants bring vibrancy into the economy. It's been demonstrated, St. Louis in itself, if you look across the history of the city, that each time there's been a wave of immigrants, there has been vibrancy brought into the city. This city will always have challenges, but this city can also capitalize on opportunities. This is one of the opportunities that we can capitalize on. And we have the experience. We've learned from the past. It's not far away from the Bostonians can. We can learn from the missteps that we had in the past to actually make this better this time. And this time we're actually having a group of people who are more exposed, actually, because this people with special immigrant visas have had a certain level of understanding and interaction of the American culture. So this is an opportunity, not a challenge.
Arrey, you've been a St. Louisan for quite a while, right? I mean, you've been since when did you?
2002.
Yeah, so you've been a St. Louisan a long time, and you've been here long enough, even though you're relatively new to your role as president and CEO of the International Institute of St. Louis. We either have a chip on our shoulder or an inferiority complex, whatever you want to call it, about, maybe not getting our due from others around the country. But I think one thing most of us do take pride in is how much of a melting pot our city has been. And whether you think of the historic neighborhoods such as the Hill, you go on forever. We just described the number of people who came here from Bosnia. What is it about St. Louis that that we can claim as, I don't know, bragging rights, or what sets us apart that makes this something maybe we do better than we do some other things?
If you had asked me this question maybe even a year ago, I wouldn't tell you what I'm going to tell you now. But I've been amazed at how this city has come together around inclusion. The city the city is walking towards inclusion, but I've been amazed at how stakeholders in this community want it to happen. Of course, we're still going to work towards creating the infrastructure for the city to become more inclusive, but the wide diversity that this community has is something that we, for a Midwest city, for what people think of the Midwest, that St. Louis actually projects a very, very different reality. And if you want to know, just walk down Grand South Boulevard and you would see what diversity really means. And the beauty of that it just enriches everyone's experience in this community.
It's really kind of interesting when you think about it, because what is happening today is a definite effort to return St. Louis to its more diverse past. I mean, this was a very diverse community, whether it was the near north side or the near south side. At its founding, it was a very diverse community, and then on through the beginning of the 19th century, the 20th century. So it is kind of neat that's happening in reverse. Will efforts be made, Arrey, to keep the Afghan population, the refugees who come in with the SIVs, to keep them close together? Or will they be dispersed throughout the community? What happens in that regard? Because obviously you would think they would, that closer proximity would help them adjust more easily.
So we have this particular arrivals, it's unprecedented in the sense that it's going to be compressed, coming all at the same time. Under normal circumstances, there's a steady flow, but this is not going to happen this time. And that is why I say to my team that we must act as if we're preparing for a disaster, right? Meaning that you think about all scenarios. And all scenarios mean that we are doing an inventory of housing, for example. And unfortunately, it cannot be that they're going to be in one area. We're actually going out into the county, right? Because we need to have that capacity. We'll rather have the capacity and not have people than have people without the capacity. So I think that they're going to be dispersed across the city and county. And typically, we at the International Institute have settled people mostly in the South. But now we have to think about North County as well, because we have to create that capacity in case we need to. And we usually put people in the South because of access to services, because we provide the services from our campus. But now, after going through this year of the pandemic, we know that we can deliver these services as well remotely, so people don't necessarily have to come here. So it's going to open up to different communities.
Arrey, you referred to Greater St. Louis, which we talked about in our first show in a different context, but Jason Hall, the CEO of Greater St. Louis, made a very strong and eloquent statement on behalf of the business community welcoming Afghan refugees. What can business do? We know you're going to look to government and so forth for cooperation and various resources. What can the business community be doing on behalf, large and small, when we have an influx and continue to have an influx of Afghan refugees?
So at this time, I want to be clear that we are going to get government support to welcome these refugees, but that government support will be insignificant compared to the task that lies ahead of us. More than just an arrival, we are working to ensure that our new neighbors are successful in this community, that they can participate in the development of this community. And for that to happen, we cannot do this alone. We need the support of the corporations in this community as almost an investment, a down payment into the prosperity that comes if we ensure that these new arrivals, our new neighbors, are given a path on which they can achieve their greatest potential. So we're looking to work with corporations to create the employment schemes that are necessary. And we have had a lot of corporations already reach out to us. But we're counting on their support to bridge the gap between the resources that we're going to have from government, resources that we're having from the community, but we're still going to need to bridge the gap in providing resources that will enable us to have these new arrivals really succeed in this community.
Maybe there is an organization, Arrey, that has never reached out to the International Institute of St. Louis before, but they are particularly moved by this particular crisis. What would you say to somebody who is looking to do good work and they really want to get going with the Institute? What's the best way to start? What is the greatest need to be met at this particular time in this wave that we're seeing?
I think the greatest needs that we have can be broken down into three categories. The first one is capacity. We need to ramp up capacity. When I talk about capacity, it's human resources, even in our staffing. Today I walked around on campus, and it's a good thing. We're flooded with donations, but our team alone, in the next week, we're going to be completely out of capacity and out of space. So capacity is one thing. So we're going to be hiring some more people, which means that we need some more financial resources. Even just communications in terms of just keeping engaged with the community, keeping the community informed, managing volunteers, because there are thousands of people who are listing to be volunteers. We need to be able to manage. So capacity-wise, that's a down payment. Operational-wise, where this community just helped us acquire a new box truck that came in today. But for us to be able to ensure that we're picking up not just arrivals at the airport, but once they're here, there are huge transportation needs that we're going to have. So we're looking to increase the number of vans that we have that can transport families for medical appointments and things like that. So capacity-wise is something. And the other operational where we are actually looking at we have our campus has a convent, right, which we need to bring up to code, because we also want to provide housing facilities here, transitional housing facilities, because we're receiving just 24 to 12 hours notice of arrivals, we need to figure out a way in which we could have transitional housing before we rent a house for them. So we are looking to invest resources to make the one of our buildings here to have the capacity to provide housing in the short term, and then also expand our office space that can be used for engagement. So those are some of the things that we're getting to having to deal with now, besides even bridging the gap in terms of resources of once we have people here, what are some other programs that we can provide for them?
All right, Arrey Obenson, President and CEO of the International Institute of St. Louis. We're down to 30 seconds. Tell people if they want to, you said the magic words, we're hiring. If they want to reach that or contributions in 30 seconds, tell us how they can reach out and find you.
go to our website, iistl.org, and there you can donate. You could donate items and you could volunteer. Your support is going to be really valuable in this effort.
You know how to make us a cue, sound cue. You've been doing this a bit. Thank you so much. Arrey Obenson, he's the president and CEO of the International Institute of St. Louis. We hope to have you back for a third time. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. I will be back.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.